Hello, NACIS. I'm Bob Kibbee. I'm the trustee at the History Center in Tompkins County. And I'm going to be talking to you today about how we are bringing local maps to life with local historical data here at the History Center. History Center is located in Ithaca, New York, and that's where Ithaca is for sometimes we have international guests who don't know, so just to locate us. Land of waterfalls in Cornell. I'm going to be talking to you today about public participatory historical GIS. It involves engaging the community using historic maps and historic data, and then using GIS to create new insights from putting those two elements together. There's a range of public participatory projects. Here are some that I've picked out for you. Particular note, Kibbee Time Traveler, very interesting. I would highly recommend going and visiting that. These are both well known. Princeton at the Turn of the Century by NACIS star, Sering Wangyal Shalwa. It's not operational yet, but you might read his description of it and what is coming. And Homestead Hebrews, again, by another NACIS member, Lauren Winkler. And a really fascinating site using deep genealogy by a local historian as its public participatory part, while Lauren provided the maps. So those are things to look at. What I'll be presenting you with today, though, is HistoryForge, a web environment for exploring local history that we are developing here at the History Center. It uses manuscript census data and historical maps, and involves volunteers doing data entry, as you see here. It's open source and documented for any community to adopt. The raw materials for the Forge, which are what's involved in creating a history for individuals, is the U.S. Census. The information about people comes from the U.S. Census, and you see here a sort of typical page, perhaps one of the less readable ones, but unfortunately those are common. And here's how it's done. It's done by community members, so wide variety, age, and background, but everyone comes together for their love of history to transcribe the records and make them available for exploring local history for local people. This is the pre-COVID version. This is the in-COVID version. It's the experience is different, but still quite satisfying for the remote users, though it will never really quite be the same as doing it in person. What happens in that process is, excuse me, the census records are transformed into records like this through a data entry form, which the transcribers work through, usually in pairs, one reading and one entering. The information that they get is displayed on historical maps. And one of the parts of the project is to bring those maps to life. We use several different sets of maps. Sandboard maps, many of you are familiar with, fire insurance maps that were done every 7, 8, 10 years for just about every village, city, and town in the United States. Sorry. But there are specialized maps that we have locally, the city engineering maps and administrative maps. So there's a wide variety of cartographic bounty there for people who are actually doing this. The way that the maps are brought to life really is through this tool, Map Warper. It's an open source tool that exists independently, also at New York Public Library, and but we run it locally so that we can control the output, and it's on our server. There are other kinds of georeferencing tools, and one of the geniuses of HistoryForge is is using the WMS protocol. If your server can generate a map and use that protocol, it can be displayed in HistoryForge. And here's what a mosaic looks like once it's been put together. We geo-address the maps. It's a standard process. I think most of you are familiar with that. All the census maps have an address, and we capture that address and then geocode it through the Google geocoder. Well, let's take a look at and see if we can do a live demonstration of this. So hold on, I'm going to I'm going to demonstrate HistoryForge for you. This is their this is the screen, the opening screen of the website. There are many ways to approach the database, but easiest name and the one most people would use would be to look for a person. I like to look for Levi Spalding. Pops right up. He was an African-American living at the turn of the century. At this stage in his life, he was a barber, but became the first African-American policeman in Ithaca. He lived at 112 Wheat Street, and we see other information about him in this records that were transcribed from the census. So he was Black, he was a barber, born in 1870 in Georgia. So we know a fair amount about him just from that. Let's think though about some of those aspects. One is that he is African American, so we can search for that. We can add a filter that searches for race, and these are all the African Americans in Ithaca in 1910. You can see that was pretty quick. It was a very powerful database. 332 with occupations, professions, industries, places of birth, everything that identifies a person in the census. And more interestingly, we can actually map that information on a map. There we are. So this is the African American community in Ithaca in 1910 on open street map. Base map, but all those maps that we geo-rectified, we can show that information on them too, and so get a very clear idea of what the neighborhood looked like in its actual historic context. If we click on one of these records over here, we get the let me try one of those and get us a picture. Yeah, there we go. So 128 Cleveland Ave. So this record shows us who was living there in 1910, and then if we click on the link to the building itself, we get all the information about the building. So there are many ways of exploring local history in the database, people and buildings, but all those attributes can be searched and searched in many different ways. So you can search by occupation, by industry, by relationship to the head, by marital status. There are just a myriad of ways of creating historical narratives out of this information that we've captured from the census. So now I'm going to try to go back here. There we are, and we've seen HistoryForge in action. I'll just tell you a little bit about where we're going. Potential directions, more data, user-generated content, expanding out into rural areas that are less well addressed, integrating with our archival resources. That's already begun. So all of this is, so to speak, in process and will result in a much more compelling product, although it's already very powerful, I think. One of the things that we can use would be city directories, and this gives you a little idea of the information that's in a city directory, and then how that's reflected in HistoryForge now, and could be even more powerful in a developed iteration that's coming up. Linking through time is possible as we create authority records for individuals, and so can find them anywhere in any of the censuses, or hopefully in city directories when that becomes possible. And we can, put the historical data into modern census geographies to better understand change over time. That is a process that I'm working on right now, and really fascinating. And I think it'll be, when we find a way to present it properly, it'll be a very popular use of the tool. The other big thing about HistoryForge is that we recruit other municipalities to actually partner with us and to install their own HistoryForges and use them to explore their own local history. So we're working on developing the software, which is open source, but to make it cleanly installable. And we provide training, we'll provide training, very complete documentation that's in process, and of course, support and encouragement. The other thing we do, the data is just downloadable. It's easy to download. You just press the CSV button, you get a CSV, and you can use that information for social analysis, or you can use it in the GIS for mapping. And in fact, here's a map produced by one of our volunteers. At this point, he was a senior in high school, and taking the data from HistoryForge, he produced this map using QGIS. So that potential is already there and in use. So that's it. That's a description of HistoryForge and how it works in a very quick and dirty look at it. But I think you can see the potential and the potential for similar projects. So thanks for listening. This is how to contact me or the project coordinator, Eve Snyder. And the whole development process at the moment is being developed by the National Archives. This is their granting arm. So thanks again, and hope you enjoyed it. And if you do have questions, please let me please ask them or contact me with those contacts.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Bob, for that. We have time for a very quick, like 30-second question coming through the Slack. David Glassett says, Bob, this is really great with lots of cross-application to genealogical research. Do you know of any similar databases or approaches happening through larger genealogy sites such as Ancestry or Family Search? I'll give that to you, Bob.
Okay, that's a great question, Dave. But no, there aren't any quite like ours. We have the advantage too of being able to correct their transcriptions, which were done offsite, and they were outsourced offshore. So there are a lot of mistakes, and what we are able to do is correct the information that they have. So I don't know of anything that they're actually doing. They do a great job, though, of cross-referencing stuff so that you can find other materials about the person. But what we provide is accuracy and a sort of a different kind of cross-tabulation to more information about the person that we have developed locally. So that's the difference. I'm suspicious of any kind of mass attempt at this because of the accuracy issues.
Great, thank you, Bob. And if you have any further questions for Bob, please go ahead and ping him in the Slack channel.